Good morning. Hello and welcome to session number 3 of our 5-part series, Learning Agile using Scrum. Before we start our today's session, let's quickly recap from our last 2 weeks. In session number 1, we learned what a project is and how is it different from routine work. We also learned about various phases of a project. Last week, we took a deep dive into methodologies. We learned what are the major differences between waterfall and agile. And we also learned how to select the right methodology for your project using the travel website example. We learned that waterfall is a linear methodology, meaning the next phase starts only after the current phase ends. The significance of this is that you must define all the requirements before you start design activities, which often result in wasted effort. Why? Because, my friend, you make no distinction between a high priority item versus a low priority item. The demand of waterfall means that you must complete all the activities in that phase. So for example, if you are capturing requirements and elaborating those requirements, you will be elaborating requirements that may be developed in month 8. And who knows, by the time dev team gets there, those requirements may have changed. Market dynamics may have changed, resulting in all that work going to waste. Now, Agile, on the other hand, is an incremental approach to work. Here, you break requirements into smaller releases, where each release delivers the highest valued functionality. The key here is that you iteratively prioritize, design, and develop these functions. This gives you flexibility in case you need to pivot. But more importantly, you get your products in the hands of your users so you can validate your assumptions and create immediate value. Moving on to our objectives for today, we will continue to explore Agile and understand how iterations are planned and executed. We will understand 2 primary approaches to Agile, which is a time box approach versus a feature based approach. And then we will end by introducing you to Scrum. So as we discussed in the last session, when you are executing a complex project where requirements are fluid because either you have multiple stakeholders, each with their own priorities, or you are not sure what the customers really want. In either scenario, you may end up with multiple changes. An incremental and iterative approach to design and develop is a better approach. So how do you actually go about deciding which features to pick up first? So there's a very simple approach. You take count of all your features, everything that your customers want are added to your backlog. Next is you add 2 primary attributes to each feature. One, what value do you give them? And I normally use a scale of 1 to 4, and 1 means low value and 4 means highest value. Now you add second attribute, which is effort. How long will it take? Now, without doing a very deep dive into understanding the effort, you will do a quick t-shirt size. And again, I will use a scale of 4, 1 being low effort and 4 being high effort. And when we say t-shirt size, we use extra large, large, medium, and small. And you plot that, right, as you're seeing on this screen, and you say, what should I pick up first, right? And always I suggest pick up the low hanging fruit. Items that are easy but gives you the highest value. Those are my highest priority items. And things that are low value and high work, I don't even look at them. So I will only look at priorities of 1, 2, and 3 maybe, and I won't even bother looking at items 4, 5, and 6. And based on that, you will commit those features to your increment, and that's your increment of 12 to 16 week. In 12 to 16 week, you want to deliver something which is tangible, meaningful, and creates value for your users. Now comes the iterations, and within those iterations you will start to decompose these features into user stories. Those will be then picked up by the dev team to do the development. Let's revisit the example of building a travel site. A site will provide your customers ability to plan their next vacation by researching locations, resource categories, travel dates and budget, etc. Now you must decide which of these features are mandatory for you to launch this website, and those mandatory features are called MVP, as we discussed last week, minimum viable product. So if you are building a car, you cannot get a car on the road without 4 wheels, engine, transmission, etc. Everything else, air conditioning, heater, dashboards, are nice to have capabilities and features, and you start to build on them based on the value they bring to your drivers. The same thing applies when you're building a software product. We will talk about these items more next week when we talk about the various roles and how Scrum teams are built. But product owner is one of the most critical roles. This is the individual who identifies the requirements that needs to be implemented. So let's assume that you are the product owner for this travel website. So what do you think are the most important features that you want to be available in the first release? You definitely want a location from where you want to depart. You want to have the destination where you want to arrive. Now this could be a simple drop down where you can pick one city for your departure, one city for your location. Travel date, you pop up a calendar and a user is allowed to select a date, and then you have a search button and you click on search and the result shows up, and then you can, and those results are sorted by price, low to high. So this could be your very first prototype that can be floated and shared with your users. Once you have developed this minimum viable product, you want to release it. But for the first release, you may want to select a small subset of your customer base and get real first-hand feedback from them on the value that this website is bringing to them. Now, as these users are testing the site, your development team will start to work on version 2 of the site. For this version, let's take, you will make a couple of enhancements. One enhancement is you want to change travel date to be multi-date selection rather than a single date. So you have flexibility in saying, yeah, I'm planning on traveling on May 11th, but I'm okay to see if there is a better deal available on May 12th or 13th or 14th. And on the result side, you want to have ability for users to sort by the date of their travel, by the price of the package that is available, and so on. And then once this version is ready, you release this version to the user community and let them kick the tires. I hope you get the picture. This incremental approach to design, develop, and deploy your site, iteration upon iteration, is the core essence of Agile. This is also called continuous improvement of your product or services. A brief commercial break. As I had stated in my intro video, these concepts are complex concepts, and 5 to 10-minute videos are not enough for an individual who is looking to launch their career in the field of project management. Therefore, I am launching a detailed course on learning Scrum and be an effective project manager, and link to that will be provided at the end of this video, or you can check me out on my website cjdevgan.com, and I would love to have you guys be part of that curriculum. Enough with promotion, back to learning Agile. On to the second topic of the day: popular Agile approaches to execute a project. So there are primarily two approaches to implementing an Agile project. Number one is time-boxed approach, and number two is feature-based approach. In time-based approach, we allocate a fixed time period, for example 2 or 3 weeks, and stop work once the time period has ended and evaluate our work. And in the feature-based iteration, as the name suggests, we allocate a set requirements that must be completed before we finish that iteration. Now, majority of my experience has been in time-based iteration, and one of the most popular example of time-based iteration is Scrum. That leads us to our third topic of the day: what is Scrum? So Scrum, as I stated before, is an example of a time-based approach. Each time box iteration in Scrum is called a sprint, which is the heartbeat of Scrum. Sprint can be anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks. Again, in my experience, 2 or 3 week sprints yield the best results. Now, features in Scrums are called epics, and you may have heard of term epic. So, and one feature is one epic. An epic is further decomposed into smaller pieces called user stories, and user stories is what each team commits to deliver in each sprint. The rule of thumb when we are creating user stories is that we should be able to complete one user story within a single sprint and one epic within a single increment that we have planned. Now, Scrum is based on 5 primary events or ceremonies, as we call them. Number one is sprint, as stated before. This is the 2 or 3 or 4 week iteration within which the actual works get done. Number 2 is sprint planning. This is where what will be committed to that sprint is decided by looking at the prioritized stories in the product backlog. And number 3 is our daily Scrum, which is also called daily stand-up. This is a 15-minute session where the entire team comes together and discuss what was accomplished yesterday, what needs to be accomplished today, and if there are any impediments that is blocking one's progress. And number 4 is called sprint demos. This is a very important aspect of running a Scrum and sprint. So as the user stories get completed, it is very important that user stories are demonstrated back to the product owner. And I'm using some terms that we will go deeper in our next week. So product owner is one term that I may have used earlier on today as well. So product owner is an individual who is responsible for making sure which features to work on, and if those features are ready for prime time. So as the features are developed by the developers and tested by the QA folks, they need to be demonstrated to the product owner to make sure that they are developed as they were designed. And then the final ceremony or event of Scrum is the Sprint Retrospective. This is that feedback loop that helps the Scrum team to improve. So what happens is, after the sprint is closed and the next sprint has started, day 2 or day 3 of the next sprint, the whole team comes together and they evaluate how the previous sprint went. What went well, areas that we need to improve, and processes we need to improve. And those improvements are converted into an action log, and each action item is assigned an ownership to make sure that we complete those activities.
In summary, Scrum is an agile framework that helps you implement complex projects by breaking and prioritizing requirements by value they create and ease of implementation. Pick the low-hanging fruit. The intent is to incrementally deliver values to user and continuously improve the product based on their, i.e., users' feedback. We achieve this by engaging end users to validate the output of every sprint and share their observations and suggestions to improve the product. This helps the development team to build what the customers really need. For example, we do not deliver a buggy when the customer is asking for a car. In nutshell, the goal of Scrum approach is to build sprint by sprint the home end users will be happy to live in. That is it for this session. Next week, we will discuss the Scrum team composition, key roles and their respective responsibilities, and how to build a culture of accountability.
Thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying these sessions as much as I am enjoying producing them. And as a broken record, I will say again, if you enjoy, please like and subscribe. It will give me motivation and encouragement to continue to build this content. Thank you. Adios.